Okay, so to host packages, you need a developer edition. If you don't already have one, you can get one here at developer.salesforce.com. Sign up. You'll get a verification message. Set a password. Now we're in our org, and the only thing we have to do right now is turn on DevHub. So DevHub is really important because this is what connects this org to sort of the sfdx command line management environment. So now we've enabled it. That's great. Let's also enable unlocked packages. That's important because we pretty much always want to deal with unlocked packages. That's what the command line packaging steers us towards. Okay, so this is good, and now we can move over to our project. So the project that I'm going to package today is called Good Morning Salesperson. It's a combination of a bunch of things. It's got some flows, and it's got a bunch of Apex classes. It's got some layouts, some custom objects, some custom fields. It's got a permission set. It's basically an app. It's an app developed on Flow and with the use of next best action decisioning. So I've got it here in my sfdx project in VS Code, and the first thing that I always do before packaging is make sure that my current local project will deploy cleanly to a Scratch org. So let's actually do that, and that really involves two steps. The first is creating a brand new Scratch org, and we'll call this test deploy 1 and give it only 1 day to live. And the reason this is important is just many times I have thought that my local project had all of the necessary metadata. Okay, so we've successfully run. The second part is to push this project to this brand new Scratch org and make sure that everything that I need is essentially in this local project. There are no weird dependencies. I will get error messages if there's something up on the place where I developed this project that didn't get pulled down into my local project folder. So that's important. So while we're waiting for this to complete, let's go authorize. Let's start the process of authorizing our, there it's finished. Okay, so we could go open it up, take a look, run the project, but for now I'm just going to move on. And you can see that VS Code is now treating that test deploy 1 as the default. So if I make any changes and push them with a command like push source to default Scratch org, it's going to go to this test. So I'm actually going to change this back to the environment that I have been developing with. Okay, so we want to we want to package this project, and we want to package it onto that dev edition that we just created. Now what we need to do is we need to connect our development environment, which includes VS Code and sfdx, to that new org we just created. So I'm going to hit Command-Shift-P, and you can see that authorize a dev hub is right up there in the frequent commands. So let's select that, and basically it's now going to invite us to log in. So let me go and use the name that I created and the password that I added. And now it basically says, so do you want to connect your development environment to this org and let your development environment control this org? And so we want to do that. So now that we've authenticated, we've authorized our dev edition org. We now are pretty much ready to start packaging and hosting our packages up on that org. But let's take a look and give this org an alias to make it a little easier to work with. And to do that, first, let's go pull the latest list of authenticated orgs. Okay, so here's the list of orgs that we are authenticated to already. I've got a lot of scratch orgs here at the bottom, and I've got a lot of regular orgs on top. And you can see at the very top is the dev edition org that we have just created and just authenticated to. And I can recognize it from the username that I used when I created it a few minutes ago. Now, there's a couple things notable here. The D means that this org that I just created is now the default dev hub org, which means that there's a whole bunch of commands that will automatically target this org if I don't explicitly target a different org. So that's a convenience. The second thing is it doesn't have an alias. Now you'll notice that most of the rest of the orgs I'm working with do have aliases, and that's convenient because if you don't have an alias, you have to use these usernames, which are a little more unwieldy. So let's go and create an alias for the dev hub that we've just created, and we can do that. And whenever you aren't sure of exactly what the syntax is, just throw a -h in there. Okay, I didn't even get the right command. If you're not getting the right command, then basically just work your way up until you get to force. As long as you remember force, you're always going to get something there. So okay, so the right command is right here: force alias set, and the choice is here. Okay, right, so take my H out. So what I am going to do is let's call this Alex host, and then I've got to go and grab my username. Make sure we don't have two extra spaces here. Okay. And if I did another list of my orgs, I would see that now it says Alex host right here in the alias. So we now have a nice convenient target for all of our packaging. We are going to target Alex host. Our packages are going to essentially be deployed up to and created at. I guess I should say the metadata is going to get created at Alex host, and then the packages are going to get created there, and we're going to end up with some URLs that we can publish in our blog posts and people can use to install our packages. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is we have to get our project over to our hosting environment. So we have to deploy it to Alex host. Okay, at this point I'm actually going to leave VS Code because the commands that I want to use now, they work great on the command line. They're not really fully adopted into VS Code. At least if they are, I haven't found the right way to use them. So we are probably going to be able to do this in just 5 commands. We're going to deploy this project to our new hosting environment, and we're going to turn it into a package that we can then pass around as a URL. 5 commands. And one thing I should mention, by the way, is that the hosting work that you've just seen, where I had to go and create a free dev edition, and then I had to authenticate, I had to hook it up, that almost all of that you only do one time, and then thereafter you just use this org. It's just there forever. Like I only created one today because I wanted to show you how it's done. Otherwise I probably would have used one that I created like 9 months ago. So it's only now that we're really getting to the stuff that you're going to do every time you do a project. So first thing we have to do is we have to deploy to our dev hub. And why do we, there's nothing there. And so let's see what we can do. Let's verify that. Let's go over. So here is that here's our hosting environment. Here's Alex host. And we can verify this by going into the users, and we can see that here's that same username. So far so good. Okay, so let's create an alias. And this will just give us something convenient to work with. Whoops. Let's try that again. All right. And now we can go do our deployment. So the first thing that I like to do when I'm deploying a project is to make sure that I erase any previous metadata. I've got a metadata folder here. I'm going to destroy it, and the reason is that if you convert your source into an existing metadata folder, then you may have artifacts there from some previous set of metadata that will really mess your stuff up. So now we are clean. Let's now do our 5 commands. So we're going to first do a conversion, and all we have to do here is convert from our existing project, which should always be Force app, to a new metadata location. That only takes a second. So now we have this metadata version of our project. In other words, we have a version that Salesforce understands and has understood for a long time. Okay, so now big command, we're going to deploy, and we got several options that we need here. One of them is to set the the time command. So I'm just going to set that to 10 minutes so that it's all going to happen synchronously right here. And then we target our host package, our host org that we've just been creating. And then what else do we have here? We have to specify the deployed dir, which is basically where the metadata is that we just generated. And the rest of this stuff I certainly don't use much. So let's see if that's enough. So that's a good sign. It means that it's starting the process. Okay, so our metadata has successfully deployed. So essentially, we have finished all of the preliminaries necessary for us to package our project. So let's go take a look at the org. One of the coolest things about the sfdx command line is what you just saw there, logging in without a password. Okay, and what we expect to see is plenty of flows in the flows, and there they are. And then we expect to see plenty of classes up here in Apex World, and yep, there we are. So this brand new empty org is now full of our project. Now, traditionally, what you would then do is you would go to the package manager, and you still can, and this is perfectly fine and point and click. But what's nice is it's just very efficient to be able to do it on the command line. So let me introduce you to these relatively recently added command lines. We've done 2 commands so far. We've done the source convert, and we've done the metadata deploy, the MDAPI deploy. Now we're going to do packaging. Okay, so the first thing is packages live on DevHub enabled orgs when you're doing command line packaging. And to show you that, let's do this. Let's do force package list, and I'm going to pick an org where I've been putting some packages. And here, formatted beautifully, are packages. So these are actual packages, and the package itself has a little information, whether it's unlocked or managed, what its ID is. Most of the information, however, lives in the versions that you create from a package. So we're going to do that. Now let's go take a look at the org that we just created, and we're not going to see anything because we haven't put any packages there, right? So we're in our project, Good Morning Salesperson, and we can go create a package. Force package create. And creating a package is pretty straightforward. We're going to give it a name. Let's call it Good Morning Salesperson. And we're going to specify whether it's unlocked or managed. That's the distinction these days. We're going to go with an unlocked package. And we're just going to point it at the default because that's where all my projects go. It's where all of your projects should go. And we can give it a description, useful app demonstrating NBA and Flow working together to drive sales productivity. All right. And so and that's all it took. So that's very fast. So we've got this, and we can see it up on our host right there now. So the next step is a little more involved. Just like you may remember from packaging on the org using point and click, you create versions of your package, and that way you can make changes, you can do versioning. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do force package version create. And what we need to do here is we need to reference our default directory again. And there's a business about installation keys, which I think is mostly for managed packages and packages that are sold for money. So we're not going to do that, but we need to use this -x to bypass that. And this is something that can take a lot of time. So you can either do it asynchronously and then just kind of pull for it. I generally like to keep an eye on things, know whether it's working. So just like I did when I was doing my deploy, I'm going to give it 10 minutes to get the thing done right in front of me. And then the final piece is the package itself. Well, we had 2 pieces left. Let's go do the package itself. Now, what we could do is we could just try and take this package ID right here. And what usually happens though is we get this error. And the reason this error exists is that sfdx has already essentially linked this ID to a friendlier name. Where does that friendlier name live? It lives in sfdx project.json. Let's go take a look at that. So every one of your sfdx projects has down here, usually down here at the far bottom, this sfdx project.json. And I don't know about you, I haven't been using it much or even referring to it much. As sfdx starts to get richer in functionality though, this this file becomes more important. When we created that package a minute ago, it created this package alias. It generated this, so this is that same 0CAG that we just created. So it created this package ID and then generated a package alias for it. And then it created this whole section, which is called package directories. And this refers to basically it refers to the alias, and it's got some version information. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take right here this package alias, because the version creation process looks in here. So it's not seeing this, it's seeing this. So we're going to need to go here, and instead of this we're going to need to do this. Now the version number can be specified right here on the command line if we want. But what we're going to do is we're just going to use this version number. This will be used by default, so we'll be creating 0.1.0 of our project. So let's give that a go. So we are starting our process, and you can see that it's got 10 minutes before it times out. The current status is queued, and for reasons that I'm not particularly clear on, creating a package is almost instantaneous, but creating a version takes a long time sometimes. There's clearly a lot more validation and special back-end Salesforce mojo going on. So sometimes you actually have to wait several minutes for this to be done, but it looks like we're making some progress. 30 seconds in, we're initializing, so let's take a pause and come back when this is done. Okay, we have finished creating our package, and we've got right down here the URL that can be provided to anyone for installation. And there's one more step that I've actually forgot several times. It's easy to forget. When you create a package like this, it will not install in production unless you do a final step called promotion. So force package version promote, and this is basically very straightforward. We simply need to choose this and say here, and it's warning you because you're releasing something. People may run it, they may run it in production. The usual cautions apply. Ideally, you're doing testing and you're not creating any risk. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And so now this URL will be useful within a few minutes in most cases. So we did 5 things. First we converted the source and then into metadata, and then deployed the metadata, which has been around for a while with sfdx. Then we created a package, created a version of that package, and promoted that version. And in the future, when we rev this code, we will not create another package. We will simply create a new version, and we can specify the version number and take it from there. So strongly recommend that you embrace some of this command line stuff for your packaging, because I find it really speeds things up and makes things a lot easier to deal with. So good luck, and may your flows run smoothly.